Welcome to Behind the Screen, where plans fall apart, dice roll high, and only sometimes we know what we're doing. My name is Talon, I am your Dungeon Master for today, and let's get right to today's video. So I have been DMing as part of my own campaign, the Shattered Star campaign, that I've been running for about 10 months now. And in my other videos, I have discussed, some kind of bad things that happened to me while DMing, but I thought, let me share some positives. So this video is going to be top 10 moments that had made me fall in love with DMing. So grab your popcorn and let's get right into it. Now this first moment had happened right after a certain moment in session 1. So I was narrating these big shadow-like creatures tearing out of the sky and coming down to attack the player characters. And I wanted to make it seem as epic as possible because this is the introductory session of my campaign. I wanted to make it look good. And so I did narrate in my opinion, very, very well of them coming down to attack the players. And it honestly did make me feel really good because one of the players after session texted me and was like, hey, that was an amazing job you did narrating that. I could tell you put your soul and effort into it, which I did. It was that little bit right there that gave me the confidence I needed to continue because I honestly wasn't sure after my first session how it exactly went. So my second moment happened, honestly, about a few months into my campaign. And it was the moment where I had revealed that one of the characters that was a big part of one of my players' backstory had actually been working for the evil cult that has been kind of one of the main focuses of my campaign. And I honestly think I had a great idea with the character being part of the whole cult thing, because the plan was that this person was part of my player's backstory, and he was like a crime syndicate from back in the day, but he got arrested, and then he had gone to prison, but the cult had brought him out of prison. And so then he was loyal to the cult, but when the party actually found him, he was torn because he still loved the player character very, very much. But at the same time, he was also loyal to the cult. So it was a very nice role-play dynamic that me and that player had. And it's just little moments like that that can really make or break a campaign. Just those small role-play moments with certain NPCs and player characters are so much fun to do. And the next thing that made me fall in love with DMing is when one of my players did something that, was different, let's just say that. Dungeons & Dragons is all about the fun twists and turns. That's why it's a tabletop role-playing game. And I got the first taste of that when one of my players decided to do some sacrifices to be able to gain a bunch of power into themselves. And I got to narrate that entire sequence on my own, which was extremely cool, and it was an epic moment in the story. And I did make that moment even continue along past it. What I mean by that is because of this ritual that he had done, his look had gone drastically different. Like, he had purple veins all around his skin, he had half black hair, he looked a lot paler, stuff like that. You could definitely tell it was affecting him. And so I actually worked that into the story where a lot of NPCs would comment and actually are a bit afraid of that player character because of that one choice that they made. Which is something that I try to do in my campaign a lot. I try to have players' choices affect the campaign not just in that specific moment, but throughout the rest of the story. For example, if a player character decides to rob a store, and they think they've gotten off scot-free, but then 5 sessions later, they go back to that same town again, and that same person who they had just robbed from are very suspicious of them because they had found out off screen. I like to compare it to video games, where if you play games like Life is Strange or Detroit Become Human, your choices influence the story a great deal, which is honestly really how I love running my games. And moving on to the next thing that made me fall in love with DMing, number 4, this is something that honestly doesn't really have anything to do with me, but more with my players. Because my favorite moments as a DM are when there is downtime, whether they're at a long rest or at a tavern or whatever it may be, and you just see them role-playing with each other, just character development, all of that stuff. Like, I remember this one scene where they had just done with this big dungeon, and they had beaten one of the big bosses of the campaign, and one of my players had spilled their tragic backstory while they were drunk at the bar. And it was just fun seeing that. I swear I did not speak for about 30 minutes, which is a good thing because I loved watching the dynamic between all of my players and watching all of the backstories kind of intertwine. And it also gave me some ideas for later in the campaign as well. Because as a DM, when you don't have to talk, Some people view that as a bad thing because like you're supposed to be controlling the story, but and honestly, that's an excellent thing when your players can honestly write the stories for you. They can talk about their backstories. They can mention their backstories. They can have relationships with the other players. They could do romance if your campaign allows that, stuff like that. When I had the first session where there was downtime and they were just talking amongst themselves in character for about 30 minutes straight, it was honestly at that moment where I was like, you know what? Hell yeah, this is awesome. I like hearing everybody talk. And moving on to the next one, number 5. This is something that honestly didn't just happen during one specific session. It's something that's been happening the entire campaign. And that is the world building aspect. I love world building. I love writing it. I love just researching a bunch of stuff for it. I love writing my campaign world. When I first got the idea to start this campaign, my immediate thought was like, okay, what is the world like? What are its regions? What races are in those regions? What are each of those regions like? And then move down the list from there. Now, if you're thinking about starting your own campaign, you don't gotta jump into a whole on like Harry Potter book style like franchise or anything like that for your campaign. You could very well start off with something small. I definitely bit off a bit more than I could chew to start. But that doesn't mean that everybody will. You definitely don't have to if it's not something you're up for, but it's something that I did. And honestly, I did love it personally. I loved just continuously writing. I remember I would stay up until like 3 a.m. sometimes just writing different things about my world and how to have different characters come into my world, how their backstories would fit, different NPCs, stuff like that. And my campaign does meet weekly. We meet weekly every single Sunday. So I have that entire week to write stuff up and add stuff and stuff like that. And the next thing that had kind of made me fall in love with DMing was something that happens honestly at the beginning of every single session now. So before we begin our session, people are popping into the Discord, and we're just kind of chatting a bit, and we just talk about whatever. We either talk about Critical Role, obviously, with their new campaign going on right now. We talk about video games, movies, TV shows, what's going on with our life, and just stuff like that. It feels like I had made a bunch of new friends just from doing this one thing. It is honestly the best thing that I've ever done is start this campaign. I have had so many new experiences, and the people who have joined my campaign have been absolutely wonderful. And then moving on to the next one, it is the first time that I had to deliver some unfortunate news to one of my player characters. So this player character had a character who was an Aasimar light cleric, and she had a temple that was on the lower half of the region, and a NPC named Melisandre, who was kind of like a mentor type figure. And there was a certain plot that was going on where Melisandre was taken, and she didn't know how, but she got using the sending spell, she got a message in her head, pretty much Melisandre begging for help. Eventually, after a whole bunch of other plot stuff, they were able to make their way down to her homeland, and she went to go to her temple to see what was going on, and she had found it burned to a crisp. And seeing her roleplay that was really, really cool and really, really special, because it just shows how as a DM, like, having these impactful story beats is honestly kind of fun in a twisted sort of way, but it is honestly really cool just to have that much influence on a person's character. And currently, right now, I am in talks with that character about possibly killing off Melisandre. Whenever I'm doing a big character decision like that, I always run it by my players first, because like I don't get the shock. Yes, I don't get the shock value from it, at least from that character. But at the same time, like let's say they're super attached to this one NPC from their backstory, and then I kill them off without telling them, they might be very, very upset at me. So I do, at least me personally, I always do run through my players. And that is just the kind of dynamic we have. With you, it might be different around your table. You just have to kind of get the vibe on what players like, ask them in session 0, stuff like that. And then the next moment that had made me fall in love with DMing was when I had realized that my players actually care about my story. And what I mean by that is one of my players had asked me about a certain element that happened earlier in the story. I was just like, oh, let me double check my notes real quick. I got a lot of them. So I was scrolling through my notes before a different player piped up, and I was like, oh, this happened, this, and they've been keeping notes on my story. which a note taker can show that they care about your story and they want to know more. That's why they want to keep track of it. And then the next one that made me fall in love with DMing was, honestly, it's a bit more emotional for me to say. Not emotional like I'm gonna cry or anything like that, but it honestly makes, sometimes I forget that the only reason why all of us are playing together, the only reason why we have, we play for 3 hours every Sunday night is because of me. I had made the story. I had made everything for the players to have fun. And if I hadn't done that, my Sundays would be open. We would never have met. We would be in completely different parts of the country, and we would never know each other existed. And sometimes I just have to kind of sit back and think, wow, I've created something special, and my players definitely, at least from my understanding, they seem to appreciate that as well. And it honestly makes me feel really nice inside. My cat likes to interrupt me sometimes. And then the next one is something that honestly doesn't even pertain to my game at all. And that's honestly just with other content creators. Ever since I started DMing, I started watching people such as XP to Level 3, Critical Role, so places like that where I got to get a lot of advice from as to how better be a DM and better be a leader. Because honestly, if I didn't fall into the D&D side of YouTube or TikTok, then I probably wouldn't have been as interested into DMing as I am now. And the final one, I will say, again, is a bit more emotional, and that's just for me personally. So Dungeons & Dragons has always been kind of an escape from me. I won't go into too much detail, but life for me hasn't exactly been great the past couple of years. So D&D has always been kind of a way for me to escape from that reality and put myself into a different one. As well as when I do that, I get to bring along a bunch of people for the ride as well. Dungeons & Dragons has changed my life for so many reasons. I remember going to Gnome Games for the first time, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago for the first time, learning how to play D&D, which honestly there's a funny story about that. So I'll promise I'll keep it super quick, but when I went there to learn D&D for the first time, we were making our character, there was a huge storm going on outside. And we didn't know at the time, but there was a tornado warning, I think there was. So we were, the guy was helping us create our character, and the lights went out. So at one second I'm looking at him, the next I'm looking at nothing because the lights went out. And so until my ride got there, I had to continue making my character with a flashlight because I couldn't see anything. But honestly, I digress. It's a really funny story, but that's not what this video is about. TTRPGs as a whole is a great escape for a lot of people. It's a great way for people to pretend like they are the hero. And the players I play with, I know, also go through stuff. And it's great that my story is helping them escape from their reality as well. So, moral of the story is, I have fallen in love with DMing as soon as it started. And I am so excited to DM future campaigns and maybe stream some if you guys were interested. I don't know, comment if you'd like to see that. But nevertheless, that's where we're going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to go down there, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and hit that like button so I know you enjoyed the video. Now, it is Talon, the DM, and behind the screen, signing off.